and welcome to our next video for Women's History Month, celebrating women in sales. Today, we are so excited to have Mary Rogul, who is the Enterprise Account Director for Progress, joining us. Mary, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So starting off, just like we always do, tell us, how did you get into sales?
Wow. So that was a long time ago.
Not that long.
I graduated from college with an accounting degree. And I found that when I was in public accounting, I enjoyed it very much because I was always interfacing with clients and it was just very enjoyable. I got to go on site. I got to do lots of different things, including audits with other folks. And it was just lots of fun. Well, typically when you're on the CPA route, you spend some time in public accounting and then you transition into private. And when I had made that transition into private, I was alone a lot, working on general ledgers, bored out of my trees. And I remember one day looking out my window, and I was in a gorgeous floor in Kendall Square. And I'll never forget, I looked out and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I called my headhunter and I said, I can't do this anymore. And she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I think that I want to come in and talk with you about, changing my career. I walked into Hollister Associates, which is a boutique staffing firm in Boston, and I walked into their accounting and finance bullpen where the headhunters were working, and I thought I could do this. I wanted to do it. It sounded like it was a blast. There was lots of people, lots of things going on, and I became a headhunter, and that's how I got into sales. And I did that for 7 years before I transitioned into more of a quota-based role at Monster.com.
I love that because you hear so much. There's a lot of cross-pollination between recruiting, headhunting, and sales. And you see people go, it's almost a revolving door. You see people go back and forth their whole careers. Do you think, having done both, why is it, do you think there is such overlap between in terms of the skill set and the types of people that are attracted to those roles?
Yeah, I think, when you enjoy people, sales is almost a natural position. I feel like I love the face-to-face. I love being, in front of the customer, and I love solving their problems. And when you're a headhunter, you're helping the job seeker. You're helping them to figure out what they want to do and how they want to evolve in their career. And that it was a very seamless transition for me. I needed to learn the fundamentals of selling, depending on what I was selling, but the opportunity to work directly with people was very natural for me.
That's fantastic. So you make the transition from being a CPA into headhunting and then eventually sales at Monster.com. Do you have a specific memory of a time when you felt like, yes, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life? This is what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it was almost immediate for me. In my first year of selling at Hollister, I loved it so much. I couldn't work enough. I was doing it on the weekends. I was finding my leads. I was on the Boston Globe. I remember back in the day, there was no internet really. You looked in the Globe for jobs, and I was calling in to clients to try to get job orders. And, I was just really enjoying it. And the first year, I was at the top of the charts. So I was just consuming as much information as I could and learning about selling and, joining as many conferences as I could, really figuring out where can I go to learn more and more. And I knew that ultimately I wanted to sell software. It was very interesting to me. My husband was in software, and I was really interested to go that route. But yeah, it just, I wanted to just consume as much information as I could and continue.
That's fantastic. So along the way, obviously you had this kind of instant success. Can you think of any obstacles that you faced or setbacks that you experienced, and how did you overcome them?
We would probably need another show for that. So I would say there's a ton of obstacles. Obviously when you're coming out of recruiting and going into true selling, when you're quota based, it's tough to get that shot. Not a lot of people or not a lot of companies want to make that transition. They're not sure if you can handle that pace. They're not sure if you understand how to build pipe and go into the forecasting. So I felt like for me, I needed to find someone that already knew me and knew my character and knew that I had a tremendous work ethic. So a friend of mine had worked over at Monster, and I called him because I wanted to, get into something that would leverage what I was doing in recruiting. Monster was a staffing, more of a job board. I could leverage all that information. So he gave me a shot. He brought me into the staffing and recruiting team, and I, along with an amazing group of people, grew that team out. And I was at Monster for almost 7 years before I got an opportunity to sell software.
Long, long, hard road. So, what do you think were some of the keys to achieving success over your career, going from this kind of great that I love? Sorry, I'm just still fascinated by the idea of CPA to recruiting to software sales. That's great. What do you think were some of the key things that led to that success?
Lots of failure, really. I think that there were lots of times where I thought I had it figured out, and then, and this was really in my Monster days, and you'd lose a deal, or you lose a sale, or you made a mistake, or you said something you shouldn't have, and something just went awry, and you didn't get the opportunity to bring that deal in. And you know, I think you just pick yourself back up and you keep on trying. I think, I've had some great successes, but I've had a lot more failures. And I think the failures are something you need to figure out how to embrace and learn from. And, when I think about why I was at Monster for as long as I was, it wasn't about the fact that, certainly, it was a good time to be there and I made great money, but it was the people. It was the people that sort of kept on saying, hey, you know what, you made a mistake, you lost this deal. Let's figure out where we could make things better, where we could, do things differently, and let's go get another deal. So I feel like just continuing to move forward and learning from the areas that you've, had difficulty within, or the failures that you've had, and just picking yourself up and moving on.
So, what would you say to someone who is considering a career in sales?
I think it's the best career on the planet. I think that what you need to figure out is, you know, what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? What gives you the fire in the belly? Because for me, I can't sell something unless I'm extremely excited about it. So, go find something you really enjoy doing, go find something that you love, and then think about, how can I sell into this? For me, I always loved helping people. So staffing was a great opportunity to do that. Monster also, you were always helping people find jobs and helping companies to fill those jobs. But for me, when I was transitioning into software, I was doing it because I wanted to keep my career fresh and I wanted to do something more cutting edge. And I wasn't exactly sure exactly what I wanted to sell, but I got an opportunity to go to a startup and I learned about the industry. And then I immediately figured out, how can I help people here? And that was the whole premise about what everybody was doing. But if someone is, new in sales, I would say figure out what you want to do, figure out what you want to sell, and go do that at a company that you're passionate about.
That's so, so true. They always hear that advice. You can't sell what you don't love. And it's a
Mhm.
harder thing to find sometimes, but it makes this job so much easier. So
It's
thinking
more
back on your
fun.
career, yeah, it's way more fun when you can get it and people can sense that excitement. They can sense when it's genuine
For
excitement and
sure.
passion and when it's forced. Smell it a
Absolutely.
mile away. I call that the used car salesman. You can tell when someone's faking excitement because it just feels like that.
Yeah.
All right. So thinking back, have there ever been points where you feel like you were undervalued or underestimated? And how did you respond to that?
Sure. I mean, there was a conference I went to not too long ago where this woman, Catherine Ross, who's a trainer and coach, spoke. And she said, don't be somewhere where you're tolerated, go where you're celebrated. And it really stuck with me. Now, there were certainly times in your career that you got to hunker down and do things that are hard, and it doesn't feel like you're valued because you're learning, or you made an error in judgment and you're figuring out how to move forward in that. But I think that there are times where you can be somewhere where it isn't a right fit. It isn't a place where you can make the biggest contribution, and you have to figure out, does it make sense for me to stay put and muster through this and go through these hard times? And sometimes that is the right answer. But I also think there are times where, talk to your network. It might be that this isn't the right place for you. I think when you're more junior in your career, my advice would be to just hunker down, to figure out how to get through the tough parts, because there's so much to learn when you're starting off in your career. Not to say that there isn't, 20 years later, I'm learning immensely every day in my role, but I do think that I'm more confident in what I want to do and how I want to do it. And I feel like if the people around me aren't embracing what I can bring and contribute, then it might be time to move on.
That's such good advice. It's a hard thing to know, especially early on, when
Yeah.
to pull that plug and when to keep going. So I think that's really smart advice. And kind of continue along the advice trail here. What advice would you have for a woman who is concerned that she's hit a glass ceiling or is concerned that she won't be able to progress her career any further?
Um, don't be afraid to speak up and speak out. I think that I never really worry about that a whole lot. I do a lot of speaking for women in technology, and I do a lot of speaking just to support other women. And, I've been asked to be on some advisory boards and most recently a board of directors. And I feel like I don't get too concerned with what the perception is, right? So I feel like, you might go into an organization and you might see, the board of directors is, all male, right? For example, maybe you put an initiative together that you bring to the executive team and you say, I have some thoughts and ideas that I think could really contribute here. And I think that sometimes you can see what happens with that. Are you asked to do some additional things? Are you asked to, participate in the next executive offsite because you had such a unique idea? I think you have to take a step back to step forward sometimes. Now, let's not fool ourselves. The glass ceiling exists, but I try to see what I can offer to other companies, to other people, to other executives. And I sort of just push through and do the best that I can to do so. But I also speak and advocate for women to be confident and say things that you feel strongly about and know that you're supported by other women that are in the same spot.
So our last question is, how do you think we can best support all the women in sales so we can continue to achieve great things together?
Keep working together. I feel so empowered and inspired when I come out of a conference, a women's conference. Lori Richardson's does an amazing conference in October called Rev It Up. And I've gone the last couple of years. I spoke last year, and I feel like I walk out of there thinking I cannot wait to connect with these women and learn from them. I came out of the last conference and I joined a couple of boards. I got into Women in Innovation. I joined a speakers board. So there's so much that we can learn from each other. And I also feel like we need to be vocal. We need to be on LinkedIn. We need to be on Instagram. We need to be talking about our experiences and how women help us. There's a lot of groups out there that embrace women in tech, that embrace women in executive leadership, women in sales. Let's be a part of that and let's speak out.
I love it. That's so, so true. And just a little bit of fun backstory. I actually heard you speak at Rev It Up. I think it was 18. And that's what inspired me to invite you to participate in this today, because I got so much out of that conference and was so impressed by hearing, I think you were on a panel discussion, but I found my notes actually from it the other day. So if anyone's in Boston, you gotta make sure you check out that. But
thank you so
brilliant.
much.
And VanillaSoft was also a sponsor of that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of your wisdom and your insights. This has been absolutely a delight to chat with you. And thank you, listeners, for viewing this and watching and listening in. And please stay tuned for more videos from Women in Sales all month long for Women's History Month.